But so far, everything has been hit exactly as we were expecting. Crazy. Crazy, crazy. To go from next to nothing up to this, what happened? What happened? I know there was solar activity, of course, but there was solar activity a few weeks back and we didn't see hardly anything. It's like some kind of system has been activated. The earthquake on the East Coast in New York, down below Trump's golf course, and the DeLorean guy, the guy who made the DeLorean cars from Back to the Future. Okay, the DeLorean estate Trump bought in 2002 or 3 or something like that. The Trump golf course is there, and the earthquake struck below it. And the place is called White House Crossing. Or White House Station? White House Station, is that what it's called? Either White House Station or White House Crossing. I'll have to go look it up. White House something. And so for the earthquake to be at White House something, below Trump's golf course, at the DeLorean guy's place, I'm just going to say it. I'm not buying the whole it's completely natural thing. Even though I forecast the earthquake to strike between D.C. and the Canada border, the fact that it sought out this spot, knowing what we know now with Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Bearden and what he told us about precipitating earthquakes in spots that are already prone to be hit, that they can precipitate an earthquake literally by crossing multiple radio waves over an area, basically. I don't know the exact frequencies. He doesn't give that in his lectures. Thank God. But in the 1980s, Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Bearden lecturing on that. And now here it is. It strikes below Trump's golf course at a time where we're looking for Washington, D.C. to get hit. So we're looking for D.C. to get hit naturally in my forecast for 4.5 plus. And instead, the 4.5 plus comes in below Trump's golf course. I mean, the difference is a matter of 150 miles. So it's not even that far. But again, why did it strike below Trump's golf course as opposed to D.C.? Well, knowing what we know now, they can direct that. If it's already prone to hit in an area already, if the area is already going to break, they can then direct the area to break in the area that's already set to break, kind of thing. So they can't directly make the quake, per se, maybe, but that it would be, if it's going to strike in an area that's already prone, all they have to do is target an area and build up the charge there. And the way you build up the charge, according to Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Bearden, is to take multiple transmitters, cross them where the transmitters, shoot the beams out of the transmitters, the radars or whatever, and cross them where the beams cross. That's what's called the scalar. And in the scalar is where the waves, if they're offset from one another, will interact with each other and build into a standing wave at a distance. Energy builds at a distance instead of dissipating like the inverse square. So it doesn't throw the inverse square out. What happens is there's actually a reaction that's happening out at that distance that's then causing the energy to build up at a distance. It's not violating any law. And that's wild, right? So, and he said it can be done with any radio waves, whether they're radar from microwave, or if it's from high frequency, or very high frequency, or low frequency. To give you an example of where they're doing current scalar experiments. Over here, at CERN. CERN's getting ready to go active on the day of the eclipse, I heard. Now here's the weird thing, most of you guys don't know this. Before they fully do a collision at CERN, like what they're going to do on the actual day of the solar eclipse, they actually power up CERN and get it ready and bring the beams into what are called, they bring the beams into alignment. They used to have a website to show all this. It's not there anymore. My buddy Tattooed used to keep an intricate live running website of all the data from CERN. The reason he did that is because back in 2011, late 2011, Tattooed and I poured over all the CERN data. And this is very interesting. Listen to what happened, guys. So, the Japan earthquake happened. The day after the Japan earthquake, they deactivated and powered down CERN. What they don't tell you is in the days leading up to the Japan earthquake, they were bringing the CERN beams into alignment. So what are the CERN beams? They're microwave beams. They have huge banks of klystrons that are hooked up in I guess daisy chain or tandem or whatever, and they pass charge from one to the next, the klystrons. Klystrons power our NEXRAD radars. Same thing. They're the exact same shape, the exact same size klystrons for radar klystrons. And there's just whole rows of them that go on for forever, and they have to ride an electric scooter to go even ride and service them. That's how many there are. So one of them, one NEXRAD radar is powered, or one klystron powers a whole NEXRAD radar, for instance. And it sees out to the edge of, 2 states away with microwaves in the sky. That's the power, 750,000 watts, for instance, on our klystrons in the NEXRAD radar here in the United States. Each radar has a 750,000 watt klystron in it. Well, banks of these hooked up at CERN to power one beam, and then banks of them hooked up to power the other beam. And they oppose the beams, and the microwave beams are contained in electromagnetic chambers. The tubes that go around the big ring of CERN, it contains the microwave beam. They then take small particles of iron, copper, and other metals and elements, and using an injection process through another microwave beam, they actually shoot physical particles of metal and other things carried on the microwave beam through the tube, and they collide the particles. One beam going one way, one beam going the other. The place where the beams overlap is called the scalar, and they're doing the scalar Higgs boson experiments, for instance. So if you go search CERN, you search scalar, S-C-A-L-A-R, scalar, and CERN, and you'll find all the scalar Higgs boson experiments where they're crossing the beams, and in that area where the beams cross is the scalar. It's just a geometric term to describe an area where something crosses or interacts or intersects, the scalar. So a scalar wave is just a wave that comes out of that scalar area, as Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Bearden told us. So they're using banks of microwaves, banks of klystrons, to generate high-power microwaves, to shoot at each other, opposing in CERN underground. So what did Tattoot and I find? We found out that they were bringing the beams into alignment weeks ahead of time before the collision to get everything powered up and ready to go. Because it's a huge amount of power to get all those klystrons going in sync and all at once. And that they were doing what are called beam dumps into an actual physical room deep in CERN somewhere, deep in the ground, where they actually physically have the radio waves go to when they're not going to be using the apparatus. The whole, it's so much power you can even, it's like pico watts or something. It's an insane amount of power. And they dump that radio wave energy into a room filled with concrete blocks. And the radio waves bounce around in that room and are absorbed by the concrete blocks and are taken down into ground. Now, what happens there is that energy gets converted into DC power when it gets absorbed by the rocks, and it reflects back and forth until it's finally absorbed by the Earth's magnetic field inside of that giant chamber that they're shooting it into. The beam dumps are dumping a ton of energy down into the crust that then goes down into the core of the Earth, and then on the opposite side of the planet, we see new deep earthquakes pop off. This is Tattoot and I doing the research in 2011. And then we see, as they're doing the beam dumps, the deep earthquakes start picking up more and more and more and more and more, and then stuff like this starts happening. Big earthquakes spread out. We don't know where it's coming from. It's not happening during a time of solar. And then Japan happened, and they shut down CERN the next day due to some technical error. Now, this happened over and over again, multiple times since then. Another example, the Nepal earthquake. They were bringing the beams into alignment. They were like a couple days out from doing the big experiment at CERN. And then the day that they actually brought the beams into alignment fully and did a beam drop, Nepal happened. And then the next day, boom, mystery shutdown at CERN. It's just like Japan. Day after the Japan earthquake, CERN, mystery problem, have to shut down off for months or years, however long. It happened a third time. They were bringing the beams into alignment, and the big earthquake struck at, was it Kyushu? Kyushu in Ecuador. Yep, back to back. Kyushu split in half. Big crack formed in the ground all the way across South Japan. Then, guess what? Next day, CERN, weasel got into the power supply, they said. A weasel. Now get this. Tattooed had a weasel as his logo on his site for the New World Order. He called them weasels. And Tat had a weasel as his logo on the CERN page. And they said their cover story for shutting down CERN the day after the big earthquake was that a weasel got into the power supply for CERN and caused a short out. Now, you got to understand how much power we're talking about at CERN to begin with, and how there's not a power supply like on a freaking computer that a weasel could get into. It's not like a rat could crawl in and short something out and cause the whole system to go down. CERN is powered by an insane amount of power coming from multiple sources, and there's no way that a weasel got in. The only reason they said weasel is because Tat had a weasel on his site about CERN. We're the only people that had it in the whole world aside from CERN themselves. And to top it off, a scandal had happened in 2011 with CERN and me in particular. Do you guys know about this? This is the weirdest thing in the world. It doesn't happen anymore, but myself, Tattooed, and Dabu77, and a few other people documented what happened in 2011. This is the most insane story. Sometime in 2011, one of my viewers went on to Google Earth. Let me show you here. Hold on. Let me show you what happened. This is insane. This ties me to CERN directly, and I had nothing to do with this. But when you find out how this happened, your mind's going to be blown. Go into Google Earth, and I'm just going to show you that it doesn't do it now. But you can go find the old videos from, I don't know Dabu77 at all, but it worked with, this happened with Dabu as well. You would go to Google Earth, and you would type in our screen name, like Dutchsince. And see, it says we can't understand this location. That didn't happen. Back in 2011, you would type Dutchsince in here on Google Earth, and you hit enter, and it took you to the entrance of CERN where the Kali statue is. And if you search Dabu77, it took you to the front door of the Centers for Disease Control. If you searched Tattooed 1009, it took you to his front door in his house in Florida, in Middleburg, Florida, where he used to live. Well, he lived there at the time. When you search a screen name, if you searched the big solar guy, it took you to, where did it take you? It took you to the NASA headquarters or something? It's like AI at the time in 2011, which there was just auto putting our names associated with things that we had talked about. So like Dabu was covering virus stuff and weird, New World Order topics, and so it put him at the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, because I think at the time Ebola was in the news or something. He was talking about Ebola. So it just associated Dabu77 with Ebola, and then associated that with CDC, and put your location of Dabu77 at the headquarters for the CDC. And for me, it put me at CERN. But why? I didn't have hardly any content on CERN at all. Why would it put me at the entrance to CERN when you search Dutchsince? Scalar. At the time in 2011, I was doing all the scalar square and harpering research. And so I was just talking about scalar all the time. And guess what they were doing at CERN that nobody really knew about? Scalar crossing of the beams. And so that's why it associated me with CERN when I hardly had, I don't even think I had one video on the topic. So at CERN now, bringing the beams into alignment, doing beam dumps, they would be doing it now. They would be bringing the beams into alignment, testing things, doing the beam dump, bringing the beam in alignment every time. And then when they fracture the actual physical particles, that energy is captured by the electromagnets at CERN and taken to ground. You're going to see a big increase in the number of deep earthquakes, and we should get a huge earthquake as they're doing this CERN build-up. So we're not done yet. I think that this, unless they shut it down in the next few days, they'll have the mystery shut down again for some reason, right? Now, they announced something a couple of years ago, and this is what they did last time. After the last round with the weasel, they came in and said they needed to update the concrete around the containment chambers, particularly at CERN, with a new type of concrete to capture any energy that could possibly escape beyond the electromagnets. And so they recast this new concrete, and I guarantee you it's got some kind of maybe like nanoparticle graphene in it or something to capture any kind of electric that would come through there, because they had to have noticed that when they're doing their beam dumps, all of a sudden the opposite side of the planet hammering away with a bunch of new deep earthquakes, and then huge earthquakes hit out of the blue, and then they have their mystery shutdown after the big ones hit. And it has to be a massive earthquake, like Japan, like Nepal. And again, we have a few examples of this. So, huge earthquake hits, and then they shut it down the next day. Each time they have some cheesy excuse for the shutdown. And each time they're shut down for years as they refigure and redo things. So why does this happen? The electrical potential of radio waves is called AC, alternating current. Okay? Radio waves are AC, just in general. Alternating current, all radio waves are AC. But they contain DC power. They're generated from direct current. Direct current goes into a magnetron and then vibrates around inside of the magnetron and comes out the other side with a radio wave, basically. And so, long story on this is that the AC radio wave converts back to DC when Mother Nature absorbs it back into the ground through the Earth's magnetic field. AC converts to DC. And the DC is straight up lightning going through the crust. It goes down to the core of the Earth and comes back out, hammering out with new very low frequency, ultra low frequency, extremely low frequency. And we get this on the opposite side of the planet when CERN is doing their firing up. Now, I'm not saying they're doing that now. I don't know if they are. I am not paying attention to CERN. I'm just saying that we also see these deep earthquakes when the sun does the same thing. The sun will do the same thing with charged particles coming at Earth from space or wherever the sun is. And that those charged particles interface with the Earth, and those get taken down to the core. So whether it's charged particles from CERN or charged particles from the sun, both are going to the core of the Earth and coming back out with new deep earthquakes. Oh, another time it happened, New Zealand, that was another one. New Zealand got hit with its big earthquake when CERN was doing the powering up in the days leading up to their, they had been off for forever. They're powering it back up. And guess what the antipode of New Zealand is? The exact antipode of New Zealand is Italy. Right here, just next to Switzerland. So New Zealand was another time where they're doing the CERN beam dumps, getting in the week leading up to the big collisions that they're going to be doing. And then the big collisions start, and boom, big earthquake hits on the opposite side of the planet, and boom, mystery shutdown with CERN. So I want to say it's happened 4 times, where there's been 4 big earthquakes while CERN is doing their thing, and then they go into mystery shutdown mode right after the big earthquake hits within 24 hours. The Weasel. Search CERN Weasel if you really want to have your mind blown. For real. You guys, you know what? I'll do it. Hold on. Let's get a new window open here. Let's go search CERN. Weasel. There we go. Weasel apparently shuts down world's most powerful particle collider. When was this? 2016? My God, that was almost 10 years ago. Yep, there it is. And they even had a picture of the weasel. The Weasel. And Tat at the time, let me see if I can find Tattooed's weasel stuff. TATOOTT 1009 Weasel. See if we got pictures. Oh, it's giving us a tattoo of a weasel, of course. AI, thanks. Oh, maybe I need to add in CERN. His content might have been deleted. Well, there's all the stories on CERN and the weasel. Tat's stuff, of course, is not going to come up. He was one of the more censored people ever on the internet. Talking about states' rights and Act of 1871 and straw man and all the weird stuff, the real conspiracy stuff. That'll get you banned. Anyway, so Tat the Weasel got involved with documenting CERN, and I got involved, and then we compared it to every single time, and there was every single time a huge earthquake hit, CERN was doing their thing, and they had been off each time for months or years. And when I'm talking big earthquake, I'm talking Nepal size, the one that shifted Mount Everest, okay? And the day that Japan happened, the big mega quake, and the 7.2 2 days before. South America was one. Man, sure is a lot. A lot to talk about there with CERN. So, am I worried about them doing it on the day of the solar eclipse? You're damn right. That would be something I would be worried about. And it's not because of the eclipse. It's because of CERN. I'm concerned about CERN.
Your skin isn't the same as everyone else's. That's why Agency designed Future Formula, a personal...
Concrete, all I would think the new concrete would do would be to capture it so they can direct it. It would still be going down into the core. It could very well be that it was escaping out and going other places other than the core, and then that maybe was causing big earthquake activity, and the new concrete pour maybe solved the problem. Maybe it sends it down to the core, and out to the other side comes the deep earthquakes, and that's it. And they solved the big earthquake problem. But man, I'll tell you what, the biggest earthquake in recorded history in Taiwan, or one of the biggest earthquakes in recorded history in Taiwan, a whole boatload of activity, the East Coast getting into the United States, that's all a bit much while CERN's doing their new alignment process again. Let's go search and see when and if CERN is really scheduled to come back on. CERN on April 8th, 2024. Yeah, that's accurate. All right. I mean, you just got to verify, you never know. People could be trying to pull your leg in chat or something, in case anybody else was doubting whether or not they were going to. Hey, look, one day ago, we're all covered, man. They got this covered. Look, KGWS News is telling us CERN did not open a portal ahead of the U.S. solar eclipse. This is the mainstream media's way of trying to placate the normies on CERN, while obviously there would be some concern about CERN, especially with the earthquakes increasing. Well, it's accurate. I wish Tattooed's site was still around. Jeez. All right. Word up, guys. Much love. I'll be around. But I did want to just show you this again, that, it's important to pay attention.